Sometimes I like to think that video games will get better, and I do think that overall the games industry is healing in small ways. It's going to take a lot of time, I admit that. There's going to be a lot of blunders and mistakes, and that's mostly because the industry is always trying to create the next big thing. So today I want to talk about a few games, Highguard, Lords of the Fallen, Marathon even, but the key focus here is on Highguard. I'll admit, I didn't think I would be making another video about this game unless it was maybe announced that it was finally going offline. But then the truth got leaked, and it also proved that Highguard was not what it seemed to be at all. And as it all then unraveled, it's also proving that a lot of things in games are kind of just being fabricated. They're all in the same bed with one another. They're huffing each other's copium, trying to convince the players out there into thinking that these games are somehow grassroots when they really aren't. Highguard was touted as this indie game development studio. It was a bunch of Apex Legends developers coming out to make the next big first-person shooter. This was supposed to change the world, and then it all fell apart. But it was all a lie. They weren't actually indie. They weren't grassroots or even the underdog. They were instead a calculated pawn that was being moved on a chessboard by a far bigger fish that secretly was at the head of this so-called small operation from day one. It was revealed recently by GameFile, as seen here, that Highguard wasn't indie at all. It was actually backed by Tencent of all companies. If you somehow don't know what Tencent is, they're a mega huge Chinese media company that has their hands in many different things. Tencent has major shares in companies like Ubisoft, like they literally saved that company when they went under. Epic Games, that's Fortnite for example too. Supercell, that's Clash of Clans, and even Riot Games, League of Legends. Actually, they just flat out own Riot Games 100%. To list everything that Tencent has had a hand in would take far too long, so let's just say while they're not nearly as profitable as say Nintendo or Sony overall, they still have a massive hand in so many games and apps and businesses. It's kind of insane either way. And also, if you enjoyed the content, please like the video and subscribe for more because YouTube's new algorithm shift is really crazy, so it helps a lot. Thank you. But anyways, the point is that in that report by GameFile, it's also revealed that the so-called indie developer was pushing out on their own to make a game for themselves against the odds. Well, that wasn't really true. Yet whenever it came to asking who actually funded Wildlight, the makers of Highguard, they were always coy and very secretive about it, only going as far as to say they secured funding from private investors. But now that we know that it's Tencent, it's proving that what we're witnessing is another industry plan situation designed to fool us into believing that it was something organic when it really wasn't. It also sheds further skepticism because the Game Awards hosted by Jeff Keighley has ties to Tencent as well, as many of the Chinese mobile games and then some that littered the Game Awards and trailers between segments were also funded and created by Tencent too. This then makes me believe that Highguard being given the final trailer spot at the Game Awards last year was not by accident at all. After all, it was confirmed a few weeks back that Highguard didn't even pay for the final trailer of the night either. Like, they didn't pay anything, dude. Jeff Keighley just gave Wildlight the position because he liked the game so much apparently, which is not only suspicious but very weird considering that every other company, presumably anyways, had to pay millions of dollars for their trailers to be shown during the Game Awards, but Highguard didn't. That's a little suspicious, isn't it? But it all makes more sense now. Highguard didn't pay for the final slot because their investor, that being Tencent, helped fund a vast majority of the Game Awards itself. This now makes people believe, especially on Twitter, which I'll get into in a bit later, that the Game Awards are compromised and this whole thing is pretty much just a sham. The entire thing is just a Chinese company-led show pretty much that pushes their games onto consumers under the guise of not being the investor at all when they really are. Not only was Tencent revealed as the funder of Highguard, they're also on the Game Awards advisory board as well. As Tweakdown confirms here, Highguard was financed through a subsidiary of Tencent called Timei Studios or Timei Studios. I don't know how to say it, doesn't matter, but anyways. Which is also at a hand in other mobile games like Honor of Kings and more. This then brings a bad light, as Tweakdown puts it here, as you can see as well. And as I said too, to not only Highguard's reputation, but that Tencent was hiding their backing through shady business deals. And Jeff Keighley clearly was not disclosing any of this to the viewers when they tuned in when he decided to go with the story that, oh, I just liked Highguard so much, I just wanted people to see it. Just please ignore the fact that my Big Games Awards show where celebrities and such show up is largely funded by the same people who also funded Highguard. That's not relevant at all, just please stop pointing that out. But then it then makes me ask, is this all then compromised then? Is anything that we're seeing real? How am I supposed to take the Game Awards seriously knowing that Jeff Keighley and friends are likely deep in the pockets of Tencent or God knows which other companies too? The Game Awards advisory board is actually made up of 15 unique spots ranging from Sony PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, Rockstar Games, etc. As seen seen here from their advisory board, Mark Merrill in the top left here is from Riot Games. He's on the board as well, and his company, as we know now, is owned by Stephen Ma, the guy below him, who is a part of Tencent, and Yves Guillemot, which is Ubisoft, is also heavily kept alive and under the control of Stephen Ma and Tencent as well. And further up, even though you can't see it there, there's also Epic Games on the board too. Also, by the way, they're also heavily funded by Tencent, dude. This is ridiculous. This means that 4 out of the 15 spots on the Game Awards advisory board are controlled, funded, and operated by Tencent alone. They have a majority voting power compared to the other board members involved, but it's conveniently done by separating Tencent's operating power into other smaller groups. So now that we know this, it makes Highguard's calculated ascension and push to be the next big thing make a whole lot more sense, because it was all a lie. It was fabricated by the backers of the Game Awards to push this game because Jeff Keighley liked the game so much, which is not really, come on, let's be real, Jeff, you did it because of the money. When in reality, it's because his award show is practically owned by the people who pushed Highguard instead. Like, why would they pay Jeff for the slot when they basically paid for the show itself already? It leaves an ethical dilemma, let's just say it how it is, and it now makes the entire award show feel less important, or dare I say legit, if you will. It's not like it's the first time a Tencent-owned game would win Game of the Year either. I mean, Tencent owns part of Larian Studios, they made Baldur's Gate 3, they also own shares in From Software, which made Elden Ring and Sekiro, which both won Game of the Year as well at the Game Awards too. Last year's winner, Clair Obscur, is instead owned largely by NetEase, that's another Chinese company, and as of now, we don't know if NetEase has any financial involvement with the Game Awards, but I thought I'd point these things out anyways. Either way, does this somehow make Tencent the bad guy? Not exactly, no. They are, as any company is, free to say or do whatever they please. They obviously have the money, so technically they can fund anything they want to. It's really up to them. But it nevertheless comes off as weird and fake considering how Highguard was presented, pushed, and ultimately fell as well. As of me writing this video, as you can see here, Highguard is now sitting at just 783 players on Steam right now. The game is 24 days old as of this video being made too. So that means in 24 days, Highguard lost well over 99% of its players, despite being backed by a company that is worth billions of dollars. The entire thing wasn't legit from the get-go. It wasn't indie, it wasn't some underdog story, it was literally the nepo baby of a mega group and pushed by Jeff Keighley as some cool little project that's made by the underdogs, the most industry-planned game I have seen in a long time. And it's incredible how, despite all of this happening, all of this protecting them and holding them up, that Highguard still wasn't able to retain a healthy player base whatsoever. Then Savvy, a friend of the channel, decided with her autistic powers to scour things and realized that, wow, a lot of people who worked on Highguard were outsourcing development to other countries instead of keeping that work at home where they lived in their home country of North America. I blocked out the last names of the people who worked on Highguard just in case, but as seen here, we had Sean, a guy who worked on outsourcing concept art to developers out of America. In the next photo, as you can see here, we have Andreas at the very top, a hard service outsource manager. So this guy worked on outsourcing development of 3D assets like weapons, vehicles, props, and more into the game. Again, not being made in studio, but outside of North America. Then you had Fernando on the right there, who was the outsource manager for 3D character models. So again, the characters were also not made internally either, but Kevin there also outsourced the props and the weapons and more to developers outside of North America too. Teresa apparently outsourced characters, so that's skins, character designs in general, etc., all not made in North America either, by the way. Pat there outsourced concept art as well, so that wasn't made in-house, and Jessica at the top left there was the person who oversaw all of this, I'm guessing, so these people all reported to her, I would assume. So now let's take what we learned and try to understand that this means basically that everything was outsourced for this Highguard game to developers not in North America, where they are, situated, obviously. And this was all done to be made in-game, and again, this was all being pushed as this indie game with no major backing apparently. It's just an insane amount of outsourcing for a startup studio that has grassroots on paper but was anything but that in reality. It means quite literally that Highguard was a game by people who didn't even live pretty much in North America, yet it was pushed as this game developed and designed by these apparently North American game developers. Yet all their weapons and the characters are just flat out the items and the assets in the game. Basically everything was made by people that were outside of the core development studio. This explains why the characters of Highguard feel like a jumbled mess of designs that don't make much sense when they stand along together, because they were pretty much all being made by people at all various places in the world at this very same time. So there was no cohesion. Each character feels like they come from a different game. Like, look, I get it. Outsourcing exists. It's been in games for a while, I know. But if you're gonna go down that route, can you at least make it seem like y'all actually had the intentions of making it feel cohesive at least? Then you had Brandon Mays, a lead character and weapon designer at Midnight Society, that responded to Savvy and the outsourcing claims. Brandon Mays, as seen here, says that he confirms that he even applied to work at Wildlight a while back but got rejected. But as Brandon also confirms, the point of the outsourcing is to create the same assets that North American developers or such can make, but at far cheaper prices. As Brandon confirms there that most big studios are doing this right now, which kind of explains why so many games aren't as good, because they're not making things in-house as much. As Brandon then further states here, he claims that outsourcing has seriously hurt his job and the market for people like him, because cheaper labor can be found to do the same thing for much less. But he also confirms that what Wildlight did was never going to work either way, because they hired a bunch of overpaid managers, his words not mine, to specialize in one thing or another like weapon assets or characters, and then instead find the cheapest labor imaginable to then make those things for their big grassroots indie, totally not at all funded by Tencent games. So you basically had a core group of developers at Wildlight who were overpaid clearly to make a game that they outsourced the majority of its assets and development to, and then claimed that it was all their own, which is just really weird to me. And the fact, despite all of this seeming as good on paper, it resulted in a disastrous launch, terrible reviews, abysmal player counts, and now reputational damage as well. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong pretty much, because let's be real, they never wanted to do any of this right in the first place. And quite a few of the devs that Savvy showed as well, they also worked on Concord, which, I mean, come on now, what are we doing, guys? This is now 2 games in a row that died within weeks of release that felt completely at odds with designs, character, story, world, everything pretty much. And by the way, Concord outsourced like crazy too. Who could have guessed? The devastation of Highguard and the lies within the smoke and mirrors has been so disastrous that even the website as seen here has also been taken offline. You can't even view the images I just showed you as in developers online anymore on the website. But not only that, but on YouTube, if you don't know, when you make a video and you want to post it, you can also tag the game that your video is based on within the settings. Like, for example, you can type in Halo and then Halo will show up and then you can pick which one you want. You get the point. Anyways, if you go and try to type Highguard in to tag your video as being a Highguard centric video, it's actually not possible anymore. Highguard has actually been removed from YouTube's game tags already. The only reason for why this would be done is pretty simple. The game is likely going to go offline in the near future, so the tag is unneeded if the game is going to die anyways and be removed. But that's crazy that it's happened regardless. The website being taken down is apparently to transfer and simplify it, as one dev on Discord confirmed as much as you can see here. And according to them, the reputational damage has already been done. But again, this is nobody's fault but Wildlight's. They genuinely had every, and I'm not kidding, every advantage in the games industry possible at their disposal. They came from successful games. They knew apparently how to make them. They knew what made those games popular. They had millions of dollars invested by Tencent of all people. They were artificially pushed to the front of the line by Jeff Keighley and his award show in front of millions of players. They didn't even make most of the content. They just outsourced it, for God's sakes. I have never seen a game studio have so much help and padding placed around them, yet they still managed to destroy everything and create one of the biggest duds in modern gaming yet. Like, it's honestly amazing that they did this. It's impressive how one can perform so badly considering the level of help and support that they got through all of this, man. It's just crazy to me. I'm sure that other studios would have killed for that level of funding and protection, but it proves that good games don't get made just because you're given a blank check and priority. Instead, it always comes down to talent and passion, and Highguard, they didn't have either of those. And frankly, Highguard was the antithesis of what passion looks like in gaming. It's a massive misfire, a weirded, bloated corpse of a game that was made by many different hands, many of whom likely don't even know each other due to how much outsourcing was done on this thing. But I can only say it simply, Highguard deserved its failure because they were given every opportunity to soar into greatness and they still couldn't do it. This then brings me to Lords of the Fallen 2 for a second here as I pivot, but trust me, it'll make sense. So Ryan Hill is someone working on Lords 2 at CI Game. As of the making of this video, I've been replaying Lords of the Fallen on my channel via streams, almost done the game, enjoying it, -2 boss fights, fights, which made me rage, but that's Souls-likes, what can you do? Anyways, Ryan Hill, while he doesn't outwardly state that his rant is about Highguard, he's very obviously talking about it here, but in a more professional way. Here's what Ryan said via Twitter. I'm seeing the age-old blame the customer rhetoric popping up again in the games industry. No gamer wants to waste time, money, or effort just to be disappointed by a gameplay experience. It is nearly always the game at fault. It would have been very easy for us to blame the customer in 2023 when Lords of the Fallen launched. Instead, we took it on the chin, rolled up our sleeves, and released 70 plus updates 3 years later, and we just revealed the first alpha footage of Lords 2, and the response has been incredible. We listened, we acted, and guess what? It worked. But we're far from done yet. Gamers want good games, end of. Exactly as Ryan says here, the response to Highguard and its failure has mostly resulted in the usual developers crying out saying that gamers are mean, but they really aren't. As Ryan Hill of CI Games said, right? No one wants to waste their time on bad things. Lords of the Fallen could have stayed the way that it was, but it didn't. They fixed it. They updated it immensely, fixed its combat, its world performance, all of that. The reasoning is simple. You can't claim that it's the player's fault because it's not. They didn't make the game like the developers did, obviously. Nobody told you to outsource everything under the sun for your game. No one wanted Highguard to be a siege shooter. No one would have cared that Tencent backed you guys if you were just transparent about it in the first place. It's like a person born into like a millionaire family trying to act like they struggled growing up. Like, who are you trying to kid with that sort of thing? If Highguard just came out of the gate saying, yes, we're the next big shooter from Tencent and we're here to make a statement, that could have meant something. That would have been transparent at least. But they instead went with this underdog story route instead, claiming that they were something that they clearly weren't. But in this day and age, you can't blame that anyone at fault but yourself for your own failures. Let's be real. It would be convenient to believe that all of your problems were caused by someone else, when in actuality, if you just locked in, you could fix things. It never helps to place your blame elsewhere. If CI Games did what Highguard was doing, CI Games and Lords 2 wouldn't even exist right now. I do hope if Highguard's failure and lies teach people anything, it's that nobody should try to replicate this sort of artificial rise ever again. For example, Marathon is coming soon too, and in my opinion, Marathon probably won't be nearly as bad as Highguard, maybe, hopefully, but at least I think there's an actual audience for Marathon. But in that game's case, if Bungie somehow fails to capitalize on the hype there with Marathon, we could see the end of Bungie full stop as a game studio, which would be disastrous for not only Marathon, but Destiny players too. Look, I get it, okay? Games are expensive to make, taking risks need to pay off, but the worst thing you can do is lie outright to people like this and claim that you're something when you're not. The only way Highguard survives now, if it can, is if the team there buckles down, releases boatloads of new content, and turns this around No Man's Sky-like, and they listen to feedback before it's too late. The game needs team deathmatch, domination, it needs tighter maps, less downtime, stuff to chase, actual reasons to play the game, but as it stands right now, there's nothing to go for but some cosmetics, I guess. It just feels, as Ryan Hill said earlier, pointless, like you're just wasting your time. And if your game feels like a waste of time, you then need to ask yourself, will a player stay with your game or play something else that doesn't waste their time? The answer is obvious, by the way. At the end of the day, like, the content creator campaign around Highguard was manufactured, not real at all. The hype was fake. Everyone who worked at Wildlight to some capacity was a manager or something instead of an actual developer, it seems like. They had a position unironically called Director of Office Culture at their place too. The most useless position known to mankind, by the way. Actual adult baby fake job descriptions, just wasting company money when they could have spent that money making real games instead. The game is funded by a mega Chinese corporation, and despite saying that they're indie when they weren't, literally everything imaginable was outsourced, from art assets, characters, guns, the environment. At this point, honestly, the entire game wasn't even made by Wildlight, I'm convinced, but just random developers from all over the world, and then they just kind of threw it all in a pot and said, here, play our game, please, and then nobody played it. Now that we know the truth, by the way, it makes the legitimacy also of the Game Awards feel very artificial to me, even more so considering, remember that Game Changer award that the Game Awards had a few years back? When this guy showed up on stage, this dude here on screen named Amir Satvat, who suspiciously got an award from a new category created seemingly out of nowhere. And then people were wondering, who the hell is Amir? And why is he getting this award that nobody has heard about until just right now? And then people looked this Amir guy up on LinkedIn, and guess where he works? Just take a guess. Where could Amir Satvat, the all of a sudden Game Changer Awards first winner who won the award at the Game Awards, be from? Just guess. Look here. Oh, it's Tencent. He's the business development director there, and he's been there since 2023. He won this made-up award just a year after he worked there. The same place that funded Highguard, that funds the Game Awards to some capacity, that made Jeff Keighley say, oh, I put Highguard on the final trailer because I love it so much. Right, you didn't do that. You did it because of the money, obviously. Like, look, okay, I don't believe these people really anymore. It's not any of our faults why these games fail, but it's also very, very suspicious and very weird that this Amir guy works for the same company that has 4 spots out of the 15 on your advisory board, by the way. And now we find out that Highguard is secretly funded by the same people on the board too. That is really weird, dude. If you ever needed more proof that the games industry at this point is just a bunch of people who know each other that are manipulating things and living honestly like in a simulation, well, now you do. None of this is real anymore apparently, and that kind of sucks honestly. It may as well be a Black Mirror episode at this point, and the likelihood is that nobody will learn anything from this either. Jeff Keighley will keep taking money and pushing products with a big smile on his face, and I'm sure the next indie game, which is totally indie guys, please believe us, will be another $1 billion backed game too. Highguard in the end deserved what it got, and I'm sick of being gaslighted into believing that I'm crazy when I'm really not. This is all really gross. But that's the games industry in 2026 for you, so what do you think? Is it players' faults or developers? Let me know. Thanks for watching, subscribe, see you next time. And Highguard is about as indie as calling Amazon a mom and pop shop. It's just ridiculous, dude. Anyway, have a great day.